So this is the Myth Represented Christmas episode where we are going to tell you about the origins of Christmas, what goes behind many of the Christmas traditions, and what other holidays go on this time of year, since Happy Holidays is referenced to more than one celebration.
Yes, I'm excited for our holiday special, number 2. Halloween was fun. So now it's time for winter solstice and everything around it, which is a lot. But obviously we're going to kind of start off with where did it all come from, up to what we're celebrating now, why we're celebrating it, or why we have people jamming it down our throats, depending what you may or may not celebrate. I like to say celebrate.
You do.
So let's go back. This is just like everything we do with mythology. It's complicated. So we're going to start all the way back in ancient Egypt, where some of these things that I may mention, you'll start to recognize certain symbols or certain themes that come up later with the more modern Christmas. So with Egypt, we had a festival celebrating Horus, which was their sun deity. Again, the main thing about all of these traditions is it falls around the winter solstice, which is the longest night, shortest day, the darkest time of the year. So many different cultures from around the world based their holidays, their celebrations around this idea of a dark night and trying to bring back the light, because the day after means the sun starts to come back just a little bit more every day. For the Egyptians, it was Horus, who was apparently hiding or getting lazy and not coming out as much, so they'd have a festival to encourage him to stay longer. One of their symbols was this 12-day festival around the winter equinox. It had to do with the palm trees that were around. Apparently they grew a branch or a stem or a section, basically one a month, and usually ended with 12. So it was kind of like a calendar for them. Also, some of the leaves in general had 3 leaves coming out of said stem, so that 12 was kind of a sacred number to them. We'll see this a lot in other traditions, like, let's go up Mesopotamia. They, from some attestations, heard about this and went, this sounds like a fun celebration. So they had a holiday called Zagmut, which, very similar, celebrated their sun god, who was Marduk. And same thing, he was hiding out, it was getting dark, earlier and earlier, let's have a celebration to get him back. For him, though, they gave him at least a good reason for not hanging out so much. It wasn't that he was just lazy and didn't want to come outdoors, he was busy playing Xbox or something, like Horus. No, this guy was busy battling monsters of chaos. Sounds pretty badass.
Does that include Tiamat?
Not exactly. These were just kind of no-name. They were just little imps and demons, leftover little assholes from chaos.
Trash mobs.
Trash mobs. And he fought said trash mobs for 12 days. It took him 12 days to get rid of these little bastards. So, great times had. Then we have the Greeks. Again, probably heard of some of these Horus celebrations, Zagmut celebrations. And they had a holiday, forgive my pronunciation as usual, Sakiea, which was kind of interesting. It was, again, with, celebrating the sun, but they had an extra take on it, where this was a huge celebration to kind of remember the time of Zeus defeating Kronos and ending the Titans. This was basically a holiday to remember the end of the Titanomachy, end of the war. So that's pretty awesome. So, had some festivals, had some fun. But now we come back to remember those little monsters that Marduk was getting rid of?
I do.
They had, same thing, the Chalicantzaroi, which were sometimes described as little demons, little imps. Basically, they were hairy boner goblins.
What?
In so many different pictures, they're these little goblins. They have hairy legs, almost satyr-like, and they usually run around fully erect.
Oh, well.
Hairy boner goblins. I think we need to, screw Elf on the Shelf, we need to bring back, can you imagine going to someone's little house and seeing a little hairy goblin creature with a giant boner?
Are there any artistic depictions of these creatures from the time?
There are. I unfortunately stumbled upon a few.
Art Project fortunately stumbled upon a few. There's nothing unfortunate about this.
If you hung one, and if it was a little doll, you hung it on your mantle, you could then hang your stocking hook on the erect penis of the goblin.
Oh, I'm gonna Etsy that shit.
We are so starting a new tradition in this house. But again, these little Chalicantzaroi, whatever, hairy boner goblins, ran around for 12 days. And I guess you had to... The Greeks really, for the Mesopotamians, that was Marduk's problem. He was out battling these. Mm-hmm. Here, Zeus just nope, I ain't dealing with these little fuckers. And they came after humans.
We can never rely on Zeus for anything other than smiting us.
Pretty much. He was probably the one who let these things loose.
Refer to episode 1.
Yeah, go back and see why. So these things there were different rituals and little forms of protection you would give on your babies, because apparently they could, like, eat children's souls or something. Yeah, and...
They're versatile.
Possibly your pies. I believe they stole your pies and or your child's soul. Again, why are we not using this today? What better threat? Oh, if you're not good, you're not going to get what you want for Christmas. Or, oh, you're going to get coal.
You won't get your soul or your pies.
Yeah, I think this would be great. But then after those guys, we have the Romans, kings of assimilation, come in and go, all right, obviously we got to change this to Jupiter and Saturn. But for some reason, which probably, like, you want to talk about war on Christmas now? I imagine the war on Psyche or the war on Saturnalia. They, Romans, changed this holiday to Saturnalia, which was them basically worshipping and paying homage to Saturn. The bad guy. When the Romans came along, they kind of turned Kronos into just this harvest deity and time.
Father Time.
Yeah. This giant, awful monster got turned into the old man Time and then got his own holiday.
So the modern equivalent of that would be if Christmas was turned into a day where Satan was just a guy, like a friendly politician who helped everybody with their problems.
Yeah, and then you named it Satan Mass. Like, they not only stole the holiday, they renamed it and put the asshole on the forefront.
Saturnalia, the real war on Christmas.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. And the fun thing is a lot of these all had the similar kind of tradition or practice of switching roles, role reversal on a social scale, where the higher end, the high class would act as lower class. The slaves would be free for, say, the day or a full 12 days around Saturnalia. So, interesting. Now, we go into Persia around the same time. You've got this, and it's become sort of popular, I've noticed on the internet lately, Mithraism, I can say that, where you have this character. Origins are a little shady, where from Zoroastrianism to Greek to Roman, he just kind of this Greco-Roman god. Wasn't a creator deity, he wasn't part of, say, the Greek or Roman gods per se, but this character, and has a lot of similarities to Jesus and the Christian version of the story. For him, he was born not from a virgin, but from a rock, but it was supposedly right on the winter solstice, and we had these things of a poor upbringing. He was even brought gifts by 3, apparently, I don't know what.
For consistency's sake, the rock probably was a virgin.
Oh, I hope. A rock with some stains. Never mind. Anyway, you have what later turned into the cult of Mithras and these Mithric mysteries. Again, you'll see there's a lot looking into those similarities between kind of our modern take on the Christian take of Jesus and his birth and that form of Christmas. So this is a lot of, again, with Halloween, we had so many traditions combined into one. This is where a lot of, again, this winter solstice, this idea of, for some reason, the sun just ain't doing its job right now. And we've got to hoot and holler, bang on something, dress up, have some sort of party to bring it back. And that across the globe was recognized, and just various names put on these characters, and slightly different traditions or way of partying, or slightly different goblins to try to not get murdered by or your soul stolen from for 12 days, but very similar across the board. These are what led into our modern Christmas, or gave the early Christians some ideas too. Just like the Romans assimilated from the Greeks, you thought they were bad, welcome the church.
So now we have the Constantinian Empire. Constantine's making Christianity Roman Empire's official religion. This is where we get the official date of Christmas. Why December 25th? It was determined that that would be the day. It's not really known when Christ was born. We don't know that. We have speculation at best, but there simply is no hard record. That date was chosen mostly just to coordinate with other holidays because the Roman Empire would assimilate different cultures, effectively subjugate them, but to keep them quelled, to keep them happy, they would adopt a lot of their traditions and celebrations. So, and what was it? December 25th is pretty much the solstice?
Anywhere between 21st and 22nd, depending on our calendar. It usually falls around there. This year, I believe it's the 22nd.
So it's sort of just merging the holidays together. Once again, happy holidays. It is a hybrid holiday in so many ways. And that's where we get the first day of Christmas. Then it extends out to 12 days. You had mentioned earlier with Ra, with the 12 days. So there's some links there. And on each of the 12 days, under the Christian church, there's a different saint tied to each day. Christmas Day, obviously, Jesus. Then you have St. Stephen's Day. You have St. John the Apostle, and onward. You have a different saint for each day.
What about the Day of Soul-Stealing Goblins?
Day of Soul-Stealing Goblins? I don't know if there's a Saint Soul-Stealing Goblin.
Oh.
The Catholic Church never officially canonized the sainthood of a soul-stealing boner goblin.
They didn't steal, like... Oh. You dropped the ball, Church.
Also, Advent ties into this, being the 4 Sundays prior to Christmas and the weeks that coincide with them. Little gifts are done at that time. You have your Advent calendars. There are also fasts done around this time. A lot of times, meat and dairy will not be eaten during Advent. So you sort of almost go vegan, sort of lacto-vegetarian at the time.
Definitely no milk steak.
Oh, no milk steak at all. There are certain days where things like olive oil, wine, and fish may also be fasted from. And this is sort of a long, complicated thing you'll have to research yourself. I don't have the entirety of the Advent fast list or all the traditions there, but that ties in around the time. And then you have the 12th day of Christmas, St. John, first bishop in America. This is also the day of Epiphany. You may have heard of that before. Feast of the Three Kings. This is the time when it's celebrated the revelation of the Messiah. It's also a time when they recognize the baptism of Jesus. This is also where you get a lot of fruit cakes and various little pastries being handed around, some with marzipan in them, many of them with paper crowns or crowns baked into them. Things baked into cakes are a big thing around Christmas.
Ew.
And not just food. In fact, often non-food items. The Christmas pudding, the plum pudding. Originally, this was actually a soup. This little tradition, very, very peculiar practice of putting objects in it and giving them meaning. If you got a button and you were a man, you were going to be a bachelor the next year. A thimble, you would not be married if you were a woman. If you got a ring, then you would probably be rich or married the next year.
What if you got the little Scotty dog?
The little Scotty dog? I don't know. I assume you'll get a dog that year. Is there a Scotty dog?
I'm thinking Monopoly. My bad.
Oh, Monopoly pieces. Oh, man. There was apparently also an uncooked dried pea or bean meant you were the king or queen for the night. I'm assuming all of these things were consolations for the many broken teeth people got.
Yeah.
You busted your tooth on a pea, so now you're king for the night? You busted your tooth on a ring. It's okay, you'll be rich, you'll be able to afford nice dentures. And these puddings went through the oddest evolutions until they got to be the strange congealed fruitcakes that get sold and thrown away without being eaten on a regular basis. I bet people who like those. If anyone's listening, if you like those congealed gelatinous fruitcakes, you are brave. Brave and lacking in taste buds. And another famous Christmas thing is the mincemeat pie. I want to talk about that. Mince pies originally were meat pies. Eventually they became the spiced fruit pies that we eat today. And some people actually, I've had pies that have both meat and fruit in them, which if done right is quite good. And these were eaten a lot. They were made into different shapes. The shapes evolved over time as different fashions took hold. But very much so, the presence of mince pies meant that you were rich and could hire the best pastry chefs to make you little pies, sometimes in fancy shapes that all fit together like a puzzle for a big arrangement. And also it was believed that if you ate a mince pie every day of the 12 days of Christmas, you would have good luck. I'm assuming that you had good luck because you were rich enough to hire the finest pie chefs and were not living in abject poverty. You were not a wayward street urchin wishing for a non-broken crutch. So I'd assume you would be happy for the next 12 months if you could afford 12 freaking pies from a private chef. Just saying. But enough of pastries. What about other cultures?
Well, as we know, I really support the happy holidays because Christmas ain't the only one right now. As we know, first of all, half of its traditions, which we'll get into some of the more detailed ones, are all stolen/borrowed or just outright copyrighted. Or plagiarized, I should say. Some of our big holidays, one is another rather ancient one, Yule, which you still hear that, the Yuletide, the Yule time, the Yule log, you still hear that in reference of modern Christmas. Why? Because it was one of the earliest winter solstice celebrations. It was celebrated by the Norse, which happens to be, we're kind of in the middle of our Norse stories at the moment. So this fits. The Norse celebrated this Yule. It was their winter solstice celebration. And the good old feasting and revelry, one of their big traditions was chopping down a huge-ass tree. And this was now your Yule log. Not just a little log for your fireplace. This was a huge frigging log brought into the village, the town, and was set on fire. That was your Yule log. And even some stories say, it would burn for 12 days around the holiday. Again, we get this 12-day thing. So, with Yule, you had your Norse deities. Another thing, we'll mention with some of these deities, pop up and bring other bits to things we still celebrate today. With Yule, we get the word, we get the Yule log. One of the other traditions, or practices still today, is one that's been kind of difficult to look up. It is a Shinto holiday called Toshi Taisai, which is the festival of Amaterasu. Amaterasu was, basically with the Shinto, they had their three main gods were Amaterasu, goddess of the sun, which is rare. Looking at mythology, most of the time your solar deities are male and your lunar deities are female. Shintoism is one of the few that have it the other way around. So you've got Amaterasu, the sun goddess, Tsukiyomi, her brother, the moon god, and their other brother, Susanoo. He was gods of oceans and hurricanes. So you have these three siblings, and Tsukiyomi just kind of sat back. He just did his moon things and stayed out of it. Meanwhile, Amaterasu and Susanoo were at each other's throats constantly. And it wasn't even like two-sided. It was basically Susanoo just being a dick to Amaterasu. And finally, he just made these storms. He just did this hurricane, typhoon kind of thing, scared the crap out of her. She finally got pissed off enough that she ran into a cave and wouldn't come out. Which, okay, so she's in a cave. Well, the problem is, she's your sun. If the sun's in the cave, well, now you have no light, so now you have no food. It's cold, you're hungry.
And it's winter.
Yeah, eternal winter. So the rest of the Shinto gods, the kami, are sitting up there and realizing, well, crap, all of our humans are dying. We should probably do something about this. So the gods go find the cave she's at. Well, they tried pulling her out. She wouldn't budge. So they decide to kind of be a little more creative. They stayed outside and went, look, all right, she's not, we can't pull her out. We can't drag her out. She's not going to come out on her own unless we trick her. So apparently they decided to play on her vanity or kind of self-esteem issues. They started dancing around. They started playing music. They started decorating trees. And something we still do today, but in a different way. Now, of course, it wasn't pine trees for them. It was probably a bonsai tree, and they decorated with jewels. Shiny things that would catch the light of the sun to kind of reflect Amaterasu and to kind of shine her beauty. Basically, this was just, let's sing funny songs, make a lot of noise, dangle some shiny objects, and hope she comes out. Well, Amaterasu is in there and going, hey, what the hell's going on out there? Sounds kind of fun. So the gods are out there shouting, oh my gosh, we're having such a good time. We found a goddess even more beautiful than you. Well, that's all they had to say. Amaterasu, she perked up real quick. Like, oh hell no, I'm the prettiest one there is. Let me go take this bitch out. So she comes storming out this damn cave to probably pummel this other goddess that doesn't actually exist with her heels. And she no sooner makes it out of the cave, they grab her, toss her away from the cave, and drop a boulder in front of it so she can't go back inside once she figures out she's just been duped.
Gods are petty.
Yeah, very kind of screwed up. But that's kind of how they explained, again, the sun being gone and it bringing back. So this tradition of Toji's, this celebration, you can now decorate some trees with gems. You can have these parties. You can sing and dance and get the sun to come back. Another holiday we have is not exactly winter solstice particular, but it's sometimes considered a festival of lights, which when you're saying these holidays like Christmas are festivals of light. Again, bringing back this light. Here's one that's slightly different. Diwali. This is celebrated in India, mostly in India, or originated in India, I should say. It was a Hindu holiday where it's not necessarily welcoming back a sun god, but there was this deity Rama, and he went off to the other world to defeat Ravana, who was this 10-headed, shit-ton of armed monster thing, much like a typhoon kind of creature or a Ymir, just big badass kind of thing. And it was said that on his way back, after defeating Ravana, that the goddesses Lakshmana and Sita lit his path. They had little oil lamps or candles that helped bring him back home. This holiday is kind of interesting because it almost has parallels to both Halloween and Christmas, looking at modern things, where you have something coming back from the other world, like Halloween, yet this light coming back at this time of year for Christmas. And really, this holiday is celebrated usually around mid-November, so it's kind of right in the middle, too. So, some people kind of consider it more of a Halloween-ish holiday, again, for modern aspects. Others throw it in with the Festival of Lights for Christmas. Now, we also have to throw in good old Kwanzaa. Originated in the U.S. People, I hear the thing with Kwanzaa is, oh, it's a made-up holiday.
Aren't they all technically?
Exactly. Not one of these holidays, like some sort of organic thing didn't come out of the earth with directions of a holiday. They're not, none of them are natural. They're all made up. So that argument kind of pisses me off. Is it much newer than a lot of these traditions? Well, yeah. But so what? I'm sure back in the day, someone went around going to Yule, well, that's a made-up holiday.
Christmas as we know it today is not as old as indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
So it's not that ancient a holiday.
And Kwanzaa, you can argue, I mean, it's celebrated on the 26th of December.
Indoor plumbing is not as old as we think in this country.
Oh, yeah. And it's been celebrated the first time in about 1966, 1967. And yes, it was based on African-American culture and heritage and celebrations of honor and feasts. Some parts of the holiday, it kind of follows what would be an African harvest time festival. Again, this kind of fits both with Christmassy things and Thanksgiving-y things, with this harvest of fruits and vegetables. And it's this Thanksgiving and it's this honoring of different traditions and ways of living and much more modern aspects than you would with some of these other holidays. So, of course, we also have Hanukkah. And that's kind of your knowledge area.
Hanukkah is another festival of lights. It has to do with... It's from the book of Maccabees, the Maccabean revolts. They had fallen short on oil, and the miracle that came to be was that the oil lasted for 8 days. Now, you'll notice this time of year, Hanukkah has a lot of things marketed to it as well. You can get Hanukkah-related chocolates, you can get gelt, dreidels, you can get different decorations to hang. Now, the funny thing is, of all the sacred holidays around this time, Hanukkah is not one of the more sacred holidays in the Jewish tradition. If you're talking about sacred holidays, you're talking about Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot, or Passover, and the Feast of Booths, and the Feast of Weeks, as they would be known in English. These are sacred holidays. It's not marketed. That is a sacred holiday. However, Hanukkah it's more of a historic remembrance. So, since it's not from the actual practice of the Torah, that's why that holiday can be used for more marketing, more fun things. And that's why you'll see a lot of Hanukkah things around. And once again, it's talking of lights. There seems to be this recurring theme of light in the darkness. You have a look of revelation on your face. What is this?
I apologize, but it just came to me. There is a children's book. I believe it's something in the Hanukkah Goblins.
What?
Yes. We need to look this up immediately. It is a story about this guy lighting a menorah, but there's these goblins. I just made the connection. Are they the hate-filled, child-stealing, boner, hairy goblins?
Probably not, but we can believe that. Oh, there it is. Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. Oh, I wish we knew about this beforehand. I would have wanted to check this out before the artwork for it's beautiful. Everybody,
it's terrifying.
Check out Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. I love this artwork.
Where are their erect penises?
No, this is definitely not that kind of goblin.
Oh,
that's weird. I love his menorah. It's very beautiful. So anyway, yeah, it's a recurring theme of light in the darkness, or in this particular case, light during a dark time, because they were at war, and this was a shortage of oil when they needed it for sacred purposes. So actually, though it coincides by date with a lot of holidays around this time, it is not as tied in to the overall winter themes. So not quite as much of a...
Yeah, this was one of those traditions that didn't directly give a damn about the actual sun at this time. This was, like you said, an actual historic event that happened to be around this time. And then where you have Christmas, where it just later got thrown on top of, hey, there's a lot of people having parties right around now, the 21st, 5th-ish area. Let's throw our holiday on there. So we have a lot of holidays that have similarities and all kind of got thrown around on the same date for various reasons, whether it be naturally occurring or some sort of political or just historical reasoning. So we have our holidays set. Now, the fun parts of what things do you celebrate? What things do you do? What things are you flooded with? Symbols and little traditions that you have to deal with constantly around this time of year. And we've been looking at lists of some of the fun ones. Now, two major ones. Obviously, you have lights. Everybody has Christmas lights everywhere. People's electric meters are spinning off their damn dials this time of year. Why? Well, again, it comes back to that ancient time of it was freaking dark, so you'd light candles. Not just to provide light, you'd do that any night, but around this time it had extra spiritual meaning. You were trying to kind of wake up the sun, remind the sun, hey, come back. So you were kind of trying to do its work for it. Light these candles, light your lights in remembrance of the sun and getting it to start coming back into the sky so it wasn't as cold and miserable and awful all the time. Another one, bells. Whether it's bells on a reindeer or that damn guy outside the store you're going to asking for money, ringing that bell incessantly.
No one likes that bell. There are better ways to solicit money from people than with a bell. Maybe going out and doing good Christian acts. I'm sorry. Gotta bust on them.
If you want anything from me, the last thing you should do is violently shake a cowbell at my head. Unless you're Christopher Walken, it is unacceptable.
And quick disclaimer, yes, they do a lot of good Christian acts, but
man,
I know of groups who can do it without ringing a loud bell outside of someone's house when they're trying to sleep after working third shift and praying to God that they get some sleep and being denied it, ironically.
But these bells were also rung for another purpose. To get rid of the little demons or imps or boner goblins. Same with the lights. Candles were lit. It was thought the brightness would chase away the little winter demons and urge the sun back. It would bring things back. It would bring the sun back, your bells and lights, and at the same time scare away any little monster creatures that were coming after your pastries. So both of them
children's souls.
And children's souls. I'd protect the pastries first. But anyway, so children's souls, they're young. They'll bounce back. I was pretty sure children were soulless anyway. Anyway, of course we decorate trees. Why do we have a bunch of trees? Well, again, we even mentioned that with Toshi Taisai, they decorated a tree for a totally different reason. Right now, the main Christmas thing, if you look at the tree we're decorating, evergreen trees. Again, this is a time where it's not only dark, the sun's not at its strongest, everything's freaking dead. There's no foliage, except, miraculously, you have these trees that are green all year round. Therefore, they must be freaking magical and hardcore. These trees are now looked as sacred because they can survive the winters. So if you want something symbolic in or around your home, that means you too are going to survive the winter.
Symbol of enduring life.
Yep, you're going to bring in that pine tree. And why just sit it there when you can, again, put some lights on it because you don't want goblins in your damn Christmas tree. Or your Yule tree. This was something before Christmas. Not only did the Norse celebrate this Yule and had a reverence towards evergreens, the Celtics had their druids. And the druids, one of their sacred trees was this evergreen, the pine tree, for this exact reason. And you have stories, I think it was the way the Christians kind of went around this was they were one story of why we had the Christmas trees. I think it was St. Boniface went to the druids and they were big on their oak trees. Yes, that's true. They believed the oak tree was sacred too. Well, this saint supposedly chopped down their oak tree and an evergreen tree grew in its place. And that showed that the druids were wrong and that the way of Jesus was better. Yeah, not so much, because really, the druids already thought the evergreen trees were sacred and pretty kick-ass. So, yeah, that really didn't do much. But again, this tree, this type of tree, because of, like you said, its enduring nature, was seen as a symbolic type of magic that you wanted to survive the winter, so I'm going to have a tree too. With that, you have holly. Again, kind of goes back with this was another sacred plant of the Druids. It's another tree that is green through the winter. So again, it has that enduring property, that sympathetic magic of, you want to endure, so now I'm going to decorate with not only this evergreen tree that stays happy all year, I'm going to bring this holly in too. It also had with the Druids, I believe, the male and female sacredness to it was the red berries represented the menstrual blood, and the white berries represented the semen for the male. So you had the male, sacred male holly, and the sacred female holly. Again, an ancient tradition that those decorations came now on your wreaths or on your tinsel or whatever you might have decorated, probably has holly on it as well. Sticking with the plants, the mistletoe. As we know, we see, you go out to the bar around the holidays and there's inevitably some douchebag that has a hat with a plastic piece of mistletoe hanging off of it.
Or mistletoe on a belt buckle.
That's smart.
I've seen that.
What? I know what I want for Christmas.
Figures.
Sadly, I saw some, hoochie yoga pants or pajama pants that had a piece of stitched-on mistletoe on the ass. Mildly entertaining. So why? Here's this holiday where we're supposed to be celebrating Jesus' birthday, and we're hanging random foliage to make out with. Well, again, it just so happens we're in the middle of our spiel about Norse mythology. This goes back to Loki. You can thank Loki for this one. There was this god Balder. He was the god of light, and one of the most sacred and revered gods of the Norse. And they decided to play a game. Again, this is metal, hardcore game, where they thought that nothing could kill Balder. Well, it turns out that everything was blessed except mistletoe. Mistletoe was his only one weakness. Somehow that got overlooked on the blessing of things that couldn't hurt him. So, Loki gets this other god to pick a piece of his blind god, I do believe, and tricks him into using this mistletoe. So all the gods are thinking, this guy's just going to pick anything random, it's just going to bounce off Balder, we're going to have a good laugh, and probably go drink some more mead. Because that's what you do when you're a Norse god. Well, this guy pulls back his bow. Meanwhile, Loki's in the bush giggling like a schoolgirl, lets it loose, boom, Balder drops dead. So now, obviously, there went the celebrating. But what happened then was that this was then looked about, of course, his mother and all the gods wept and, were very depressed and mourned. But instead of looking at this as obviously it was a bad thing, but it wasn't the mistletoe's fault. It was used. So they kind of used it as a symbol then of the mother's love towards her child. It became the symbol of love and fertility, oddly enough. Kind of going against what it actually was. It caused death and sadness and hate. But let's flip that around. Let's make it something positive to remember Balder by. So, with this fertility, it kind of changed into this love charm. Originally more of a mother's love for her child versus the romantic / just trying to get laid love that we say the mistletoe is today. But again, that's something, if it's an annoying little practice you try to avoid, it's because of Loki. Just blame it on Loki. What are some other fun little traditions you might have?
Christmas carols. Christmas carols, oh yeah, they're awful, aren't they? Now, currently we have Christmas music, a radio station that makes all people working in restaurants and retail want to kill themselves because it's all they hear for hours on end. And those stations, in spite of the fact that there are so much Christmas music out there, they tend to loop the same 20 damn songs over and over again. And, leave out lots of things. Half of it is not Trans-Siberian Orchestra for some reason. So, why this? Well, there were originally the Christmas carols. People would go around singing them through the neighborhood. A much nicer version. I would rather people with candles come up to my house and sing, and then I would give them cookies, and, oh, isn't that a sweet neighborly thing, and not just a radio station looping music. But that's not the original tradition. The original tradition of Christmas carols actually came from an old pagan practice where songs were sung during the solstice. And caroling, the term carol, actually comes from dancing. It was a song and dance done to tell stories. This was a form of educational entertainment. And if you look at many of the Christmas carols we have, they do tell stories. They're telling stories of Christmas. They're telling stories that have object lessons, things like I saw 3 ships a-sailing, that's a story that's being told. That's what these originally were. And it's a very, very ancient, almost quite literally a Neolithic practice of singing and dancing to tell a story. The
Winter
oldest
Solstice the musical.
Yes, it was the oldest form of entertainment, the storyteller, the oldest form of language, music, and one of the all-time forms of expression, dance. So it really did start with the musicals that were used to tell stories and teach lessons in ancient times, and they've simply evolved over time. And this is why actually caroling, when people actually still do that through neighborhoods, they're keeping the original tradition more alive. They are going through the neighborhood and telling stories, although I'd like to see more dancing carolers.
That would be fun. We should bring that back.
Yeah, anybody out there who's planning on doing caroling, do some little dances too.
But can we do like the original pagan version? Like, let's get some animal hides.
I have a couple.
And
we need more animal hides. Is what we need.
We'll get so many, dress up in animal hides, and go sing songs about bringing the sun back and angry boner goblins to all our neighbors.
Can we try to find some songs in the ancient tongue?
Yes, it'll freak them out even more.
Do we have enough time? We'll make the time, damn it. Okay, so that's Christmas carols.
You had mentioned some of the confectionery things. One, the good old candy cane.
Yes.
Whether you eat it, whether it comes in some fruit flavors now, that's pretty awesome. It's this modern candy, this modern Christmas treat. Again, we're going back to pagan times, when the peppermint leaf and even peppermint tea has been part of these solstice celebrations, because if you think of peppermint, you get kind of that cool wave, which reminds you of the cool winter, and the heat from it, that almost spice to it that celebrates or kind of symbolizes the sun coming back. So winter solstice candy, the perfect thing, is some sort of peppermint. So there was an American inventor, confectioner, that decided he's going to make a treat. Yeah, we're going to use peppermint, because this is the time of year when peppermint was real popular. Now, usually when I think of the candy cane, and I see people even say you're going to draw it, or in images, the hoop's on the top. It's upside down. It was supposed to be a J for Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah. The white was for the virgin birth, and the red stripe, which is apparently one stripe never ending. I never really looked. I'm going to do that now.
One solid long stripe.
That was the blood that Jesus bled out on the cross.
Oh.
So when you're hanging those things anywhere for your decorations or on your tree, your candy canes, they're upside down. Just saying. Now, with Christmas, you've got to mention, we have to tackle Santa.
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 Father Christmas?
Yes. Even I have known families of other religions that have jumped on the Santa bandwagon. Where modern times, Santa is almost so removed from anything religious, it's just this fun little practice at this time of the year. I know Hindu family, Jewish family that throw in Santa, which at first I thought was really bizarre. I'm like, how can you do this? And then both families I've talked to as friends explained it. It's you don't look at it as a religious aspect of anything. It's just this dude that drops off presents.
It's true. He's very non-denominational.
Yeah, but why? Why do we tell our children this fat man breaks into your house at night and will either give you toys or coal?
And you have to leave him cookies and milk and possibly brandy and meat pies.
Oh, anyway. Well, again, this goes back to very pagan times, very long ago, and back to our friends the Norse, where we don't have, say, one. Of course, you have, with your Christian stories of St. Nicholas, was a saint, pudgy, white beard, looks like the guy that you see on the Coca-Cola commercials this time of year. But the original kind of stories, you had Odin. Our best ancient origin story for Santa Claus would be Odin. Drives around on an 8-legged horse, not a slave reindeer, but we'll get there. And was even known to, he would kind of, now mainly it wasn't children at the time, but it was known for giving gifts to the valiant warriors. Later kind of translated into even children. He would give presents to them. It was believed Freya had a chariot drawn by cats. Then, later around this time... I want one of those. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes.
We need to train our cats better. And it was said that she would give gifts for around 12 days around Yule and give those things out. You also had, talking about weird things pulling chariots, Thor had a chariot pulled by 2 giant rams or goats. So you have this tradition of animals that shouldn't be flying, but are now flying and pulling you through the air, and different deities that were delivering gifts or bestowing blessings upon certain people because they were good. Also with Odin, just looking at some of the old imagery, I mean, all you gotta do is put an eye patch on Santa, and you pretty much got Odin. Put a spear in his hand, pretty damn similar.
Do we have a Santa decoration? Because
No,
eye patch and spear.
We're doing this.
Let's do it.
So, and then when you have your reindeer, it was a popular northern animal. That really became popular with the Americas. Again, Rudolph was a complete invention, I believe, for a marketing campaign for Woolworths at the time.
There were a lot of things. The pickle on the Christmas tree is believed to be a marketing thing. The origin story for it in Germany, there's not really a lot to back that up. It's believed not to be true. There's a lot of things that were just new marketing ideas. I'll get into that later.
Santa, we've covered sleigh, giving of gifts. But remember, Santa is not making these gifts. It's the elves. So, popular story goes, up in the North Pole, we've got Santa in his workshop where he just oversees a bunch of elves. Most depictions of the elves are tiny little fellows with pointy ears making toys. Alright, we got a problem here. They ain't elves. Elves in most mythology are known for their tall stature. Again, looking at the Norse, they were very tall, some up to 6 to 7 feet tall on average. So the things in his workshop, not it. Plus, elves were kind of kept to themselves and did their own elfy thing. So if you'd go up to an elf and say, I want you to make this teddy bear for little Timmy, they'd give you the finger and snub you off. No, you want shit made? You go to the dwarves. Right size. So, what we're saying our elves are actually dwarves. Goes back to Odin, who was known as an elf king, also had control and gave power to the dwarves, which were one of the race of the 9 realms in Norse mythology, and were known for constantly making cool stuff for the Norse gods. We're covering it in our podcast. We'll mention an actual legend of this in our next episode.
And the odd prices you pay for some of those things.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not. Oh, God, do you think Mrs. Claus did that?
Probably.
We'll let you know what we're thinking. We're thinking.
Does she have a nice necklace?
If Mrs. Claus has a nice necklace, or that's just how she got the elves to give them all the toys. She just slept with them all. You'll understand the next episode. We swear we'll explain this. But yes, so you've got Santa and elves. It's actually Odin and a bunch of dwarves. Dwarves were known for making magical and different items. Now, in Norse mythology, they mainly made them for the deities. Now, these days, I guess times are tough, and now they resort to making teddy bears and wooden trains for a bunch of little pain-in-the-ass kids. So there's even stories of how, with Santa coming down the chimney, that Odin would come down, say, a fire pit, basically because, again, that Yule log was sacred to them. Where was the Yule log? In the fireplace. So it's said that even Odin might come and check your Yule log, which, again, was in the fireplace, so may have got some of that coming down the chimney traditions going along there.
Huh, that's really cool. It's amazing how all of these tie together. I've talked a lot about how so many mythologies correlate. There are a lot of similar themes, but they also intertwine and evolve from each other. Because so many cultures, so many countries would invade one another, or they would build alliances, and you get a lot of these mixings of different traditions together. So it's really hard to know how all these things got into Christmas. Some of them were a coincidence that they relate to another culture. Some of them were cultures tying together politically. So what about all these other things in Christmas? What about the Christ in Christmas? What about calling it Xmas?
If I see one more bumper sticker that says...
Well, Xmas actually is putting the Christ in Christmas.
It's what the X-Men celebrate every year.
That too.
Oh.
But mostly, Christmas, it's Christ and Mass. And the X is actually the first letter in Christ, in the original Greek. Christos. And that is actually where Xmas comes from. So when someone says Xmas, they are not taking Christ out of Christmas. They're just spelling it right. It would be like calling it CMS, but just using the original Greek. There were a lot of changes, a lot of permutations of the name of the Messiah, from Yeshua HaMashiach to Jesus Christ, Jesu Christos. Every language has a different way of saying it. And that is where that comes from.
I'd like it if you're going to yell at me and say how horrible I am for wishing you a happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas, please go back and research your actual religion.
Christmas is an amalgamation of about 500 different holidays. And if you want Christ in Christmas, by all means go out and help the poor and the needy, like he said. That will put him back in the Christmas more than anything else.
I know Christians that will not celebrate Christmas because of its realizing it's 90% pagan traditions. So there, at least I respected that they've done their research. Same with this actual real-life people I know won't celebrate Easter either. Easter and Christmas they have nothing to do with because it's pretty much all pagan influence. Just like almost all the traditions have some sort of, and not just pagan, but from other customs, as you said. It is just this throw all these different customs and holidays of different religions from around the world in a blender, all because it all started with the winter solstice. So I think we pretty much covered our little history of the holiday season.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of additional details, but that's the gist of it.
So this is, hopefully you enjoyed our second holiday episode. We will be back next week with episode 2 for the Norse mythology, where we will explain some of the things we talked about in this episode in further detail.
And until then, have a Merry Christmas, or whatever it is you celebrate, Happy Holiday, or just at least don't freeze to death this winter.
Enjoy the winter solstice in whatever way, religious or non, that you would like.
Bye-bye.
Bye!